Hi, I'm Alec, and today I want to talk about two games, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and Outer Wilds. Spoiler warning for both games, they're both well worth playing, and Outer Wilds especially is one you want a blind experience of. Now with that out of the way, why these two games specifically? Well, both of these are open world games that I believe challenge the genre conventions of storytelling and narrative structure. In both cases, the player character must utilise knowledge of the past in order to fix the problems of the present. In Outer Wilds' case, the mysterious Nomai seem to hold the key to leaving the time loop and solving the minor issue of the universe exploding via multiple simultaneous supernovae. In The Legend of Zelda's case, the mysterious Zonai seem to have the answers as to why Princess Zelda has gone missing and why gloom infects every corner of Hyrule. Starting with Tears of the Kingdom, the Zonai are immediately set up through murals found by Link and Zelda as an ancient civilization of near gods that were essential to the founding of the Kingdom of Hyrule. We later discover that the word civilization is a bit overeager, as even by the time of the mural, only two Zonai seemingly remain. Despite this, their ruins have outlived them, appearing in the sky, but also scattered on the ground and buried in the depths. Thus, when we start the game proper, we have two main mysteries to solve, those of the present, such as what's happened to the world regarding the Plague of Gloom and to the whereabouts of Zelda, and those of the past, relating to the Zonai and how they fit into the whole story. These two threads lead the player on two different paths, one to the four corners of the map, with four themed temples leading to a secret stone for each completed. The second strand of the main quest is where the game really diverges from typical open world narrative design. Starting en route to Rito Village at the start of the game, a memory of the past is revealed to Link upon finding a teardrop in a chalk figure. With this discovery, Link can piece together the mystery of Zelda's disappearance, the whereabouts of the Master Sword, and the truth of the doppelganger Zelda wreaking havoc on Hyrule. This is done by finding further tears across the map and watching their respective cutscenes. These two can be done in any order, and are a questline concurrent with the four temples. This is the open world innovation I find interesting, a questline directly tied to exploration that requires the player to piece together several elements to uncover the truth. Sadly, Zelda's identity, the doppelganger Zelda, and the location of the Master Sword are all mysteries that can be figured out from inference from one or two memories. But if the player either doesn't piece this together, or simply doesn't act on said information, finding all the memories reveals another, showing Zelda to have become an immortal dragon to bring the Master Sword to Link through time. Finding this also lowers her flying height to better allow the player to catch her and take the Master Sword. The implementation of this twist is poor. Aside from how predictable this is from two of the memories, which are some of the closest geographically to where you start the game, none of the four temples changes as a result of your discovery. Link doesn't have anything to say about the doppelganger Zelda ruining every corner of Hyrule, nor does he mention the true Zelda's predicament until the other quests are done. If the player chooses to find all the memories before going to the temples, they are forced to watch Link stand by as different characters are duped by this false Zelda, not correcting them with the vital information he has. Then, after all four of these are completed, the player must walk into a trap laid by the fake Zelda in Hyrule Castle. Not accounting for the most basic level of player autonomy is a major failing in open world narrative design. This isn't even a sequence break or a glitch. The game gives you both quests almost immediately, and the memory tiers take far less time to complete than the temples and their requisite quests. This outcome is what happened on my first playthrough. I had only completed one of the four temples before seeing the final memory, so the repetitive dialogue that plagues the four temple questlines was made all the more irritating by the fact that I, and by extension Link, already knew all the answers to the questions asked in each of these temples. This being said, I still don't believe the narrative would be satisfying even if the game did account for Link's knowledge. Let's think back to the opening and the intrigue about the Zonai, all the questions naturally raised by having an ancient civilization introduced as the progenitors to your own. Perhaps certain elements of Hyrule will be revealed to have originated from Zonai traditions, or maybe we could get some cultural insight by seeing what the Zonai built. This is of course not the case. The issues with the narrative here go beyond just the plot itself. The very architecture of the game is built in a manner hostile to its own story. Returning to the dragon's memory tiers, I first take issue with the locations of these. Dragon Zelda leaves these exclusively on surface level, barren areas, on beaches, empty fields and cliff faces. This makes the archaeology we perform hollow. The only sense of the past we get is found in dialogue-heavy cutscenes. This makes the tiers themselves quite boring, as the only engagement the player has with them is spotting which area of the chalk drawing contains the tier, and makes finding them too easy, as the player will doubtless spot each and every one as they travel to the different Skyview towers to reveal the map. Additionally, the Sky Islands are rendered largely useless in conveying any information about the people that supposedly live there. Why are there so many islands for seemingly 2 Zonai? Why is none of the buildings functional for anything other than reaching other buildings? Why are the shrines like that? You may ask all these questions, and they shall each be fruitless, for there is no answer. There are no Zonai ruins or artifacts to be found near the tiers. Every element of the mystery is spelled out as clearly and easily as possible via video. Sonia, Raru and Mineru are all made utterly dull as characters, existing only to explain the plot directly to Zelda and then die. The Zonai are a plot device to hand out inexplicable MacGuffins to the player, from the arm powers to the secret stones. Their architecture exists purely for Link to loot it, and their history consists only of the imprisoning war. You might find it hard to imagine a version of Tears of the Kingdom where the ancient three-eyed goat people are actually interesting and utilised well by the open world. But thankfully Outer Wilds exists, and the Nomai, the game's own ancient civilization of three-eyed goat people, are the most interesting unseen characters in any game, let alone an open world one. Similar to Zelda, the opening of Outer Wilds sets up questions about the world and the people that once inhabited it. Yet, Outer Wilds has both the ambition and the execution to answer all of these questions in a narratively satisfying way. Take the Quantum Moon storyline, for example. Quantum objects are first introduced in the Harthian Museum purely as a mechanical curiosity, starting with the first element of their mystery by showing the player that the quantum rock moves while it's not being observed. But as the player learns more about the Quantum Moon and its significance to the Nomai, the language surrounding it changes to that of pilgrimage. The Nomai do not simply tell the player how to interact with the quantum objects for the sake of it. They have their own internal motivations for finding the moon and going to its 6th location. The player must follow in the Nomai's footsteps, from the reverent tower of quantum trials to the accidental discovery of quantum entanglement. They must perform a pilgrimage of their own, and learn of Solanum, the Nomai about to make her first pilgrimage to the moon's 6th location. Exploration in Outer Wilds leads not only to new discoveries, but also to new knowledge, and only by understanding this knowledge will players be able to make further discoveries. A great example of this is again at the Quantum Moon, where a sufficiently inventive player may well figure out how to land on the moon, even if they have not yet reached the Tower of Quantum Trials. They get the satisfaction of landing on the moon, yet they do not immediately gain access to the moon's secrets. To do this, they must continue following clues related to the Quantum Moon, and in doing so they will get the whole picture of the Nomai's research into the Quantum Moon and understand their religious attitude towards it. This means that narrative cohesion is never entirely sacrificed, despite total freedom being offered to the player. We get all the satisfaction of exploring an open world game, yet avoid the narrative pitfalls of feeling artificially locked out of the story for doing so. By linking the story and gameplay so inextricably, Outer Wilds creates a scenario where good level design necessitates and complements good narrative design. Accessing later areas too easily would jeopardize the story, and learning certain plot points too early would trivialize most of the puzzles. It's this careful balance that separates Outer Wilds structurally from Tears of the Kingdom, and ensures that exploration is satisfying and works with the narrative. The union of narrative and gameplay also means that rewarding a player with new information further engages them in the story. Solving the Quantum Moon mystery provides the player with a hint as to how they must complete the game, but it also gives them the satisfaction of meeting Solanum, whom we have heard so much about through the clues that got us there. Another way Outer Wilds distinguishes its narrative is in its complexity. The game follows 5 different mysteries which are thematically harmonious, yet carefully differentiated in game. These consist of the Quantum Moon, which is almost totally separate, the Vessel, the Ash Twin Project, the Orbital Probe, and the Ruptured Core. In keeping these separate, the entire solar system of Outer Wilds is made constantly relevant to the plot, as different planets are connected by the different mysteries. The geography of the game means that the player will discover clues about these different mysteries concurrently, making them likely to have uncovered all 5 of the main mysteries before completing the game. To demonstrate this, let's look at Brittle Hollow. The planet itself is a puzzle in terms of how the player chooses to navigate it, and their successes and failures in navigation will expose them to different clues. The black hole in the middle presents a constant obstacle, with a single misstep sending the player to the other side of the system, and large chunks of the planet will fall in with them over the course of a single loop. Correctly traversing the place can lead you to the Southern Observatory with clues about the probe and the Quantum Moon. Another path yields clues about the Ash Twin Project and its related warp core technology, and on the surface of the planet, one of the escape pods hints at the location of the vessel. By breaking up the storylines in this way, the game actually hides its own 5-pronged narrative structure, encouraging the player to truly explore rather than only follow a single plotline to its conclusion. It also keeps the pacing of the game steady, as the player is unlikely to solve one mystery without any idea of how to progress the other 4, preventing players from being stuck on a single puzzle without any narrative interest in the rest of the game. Tears of the Kingdom has too little plot to fill its own structure. The game has about 2 different narrative threads stretched over 3 main quest lines. These threads get very little added to them throughout the game, remaining with the same mysteries I laid out in the opening, those of the past and present. The 4 temples follow the present issues and teach us that we will need to collect the secret stones in order to defeat Ganondorf. And then they teach this to us again, and again, and again. After this, we then get the privilege of learning the truth about the false Zelda, as if we hadn't figured this out already. The tears follow the story of the past, but end up overlapping with the present in their reveal of Ganondorf as the false Zelda. The glacial pace of the game is by design, because there is simply no more plot to fill these quests. I've already covered most of my issues with the structure, but the issues with the plot are fundamental to why this structure doesn't work. Tears of the Kingdom is incapable of a good player-driven narrative because it neglects its characters and its mysteries. There is so little to discover, and it makes the exploration feel empty as a result. Finally, I want to touch upon the Mineru questline, which is Tears of the Kingdom's best attempt at combining exploration and narrative. The path to Mineru's hidden temple is one of the best puzzles in the game. Starting after the 4 temples and 12 tears, the player gains access to some Zonai ruins that have fallen in Kakariko village. Deciphering a slab in these ruins leads us to the jungle, and after more riddles there, the Sky Islands above, which were previously hidden inside a thunderstorm, become unshrouded. From these islands, Link is then shown the path to the temple. The multifaceted nature of the puzzle makes it very difficult to find Mineru early in the game. It's actually reminiscent of how Outer Wilds does this, by layering its puzzles to prevent this sort of thing from happening. Of course, the game doesn't really have a contingency if you do find Mineru early. She never directly mentions Zelda's draconification, despite clearly knowing about it and having every reason to tell Link. But the game does at least try to prevent this overlap, so I don't see this as a major issue. From a level design standpoint, this questline and the temple that follows are some of the most interesting in the game, and on a surface level it seems like we're engaging more with Zonai history. However, the problems with this questline relate to the slabs in Kakariko Village. The slab that holds the first vital clue to finding Mineru is poorly translated, meaning we only get a handful of words, all of which point straight to the next piece of the puzzle. We don't get any context for the significance of the Spirit Temple to the Zonai, or learn much about Mineru whatsoever. The intended reward for finding Mineru is the full explanation of the game's opening, an explanation that struggles to add anything of interest to the Zonai beyond what we already got in the first 5 minutes of the game. Both Mineru and Zelda tell us that the Zonai are godlike, descended from the heavens, and fought in the imprisoning war. The only new information Mineru adds tens of hours into the game is a full cutscene of the imprisoning war fight, something the player will already know the full context and implications of 5 times over. Even the other slabs in Kakariko Village focus almost entirely on the imprisoning war. This would have been the perfect opportunity to let the player learn more about the Zonai, given that at that point they will already have all the tools necessary to defeat Ganondorf. But the game wastes this moment on repeating what Link already knows. In conclusion, while both of these games have very ambitious narrative structure, only Outer Wilds has the execution to follow through on its lofty goals. The plot is complex enough that it requires thorough exploration of each area to fully comprehend and solve each of the game's mysteries. The level design both guides the player and contextualizes the Nomai, such that story progression and gameplay progression is synchronized. Tears of the Kingdom kinda neglects both its plot and its level design, resulting in a very repetitive story and pretty meaningless exploration. That being said, I do wish that more AAA open world games would learn from both of these. The linear narrative structure that a lot of open world games go with often clashes with the inherent non-linearity of the open world. Combining a linear narrative structure as well as a non-linear open world design can result in player agency in a game and players' narrative satisfaction of a game feeling kind of mutually exclusive. And sadly, this is the typical setup for a AAA open world game. If we choose to follow the story in one of these games, then we'll end up with a lot of areas that feel quite lively, full of quests and characters that want to talk to us about what's happening in the story right now, but will be guided to and from each of these areas and throughout the entire game by quest markers, and our own agency will feel severely diminished as a result. If we choose to go off on our own during these games, well then we'll end up with the story being put entirely on hold in the meantime, because there's a single point of access to this plot. And also, the areas that we do visit will likely end up feeling a bit empty, because the quests and the characters don't know what to do with you yet. This is why I hope that some of these games can learn a thing or two from the successes of Outer Wilds and the shortcomings of The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, a comment, maybe subscribe if you want to see some more, and type, if that's a thing you can do. This video I've been working on for quite a while now, and I've been thinking about both these games since I played them back in 2023. I would also implore that you watch this video by Zomric. It should appear roughly on your screen right now. It's on the same topic, but it's really well made, and it's got an interview with Alex Beachum, who's the creative director of Outer Wilds. Stick around for my next video, which hopefully won't have an excellent video on the exact same topic released just before mine. Thanks for watching. Bye!